LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. A player, despite having the highest of expectations, has more often than not far exceeded them, and it has been a blessing to watch him play. And speaking of blessings, many of the NBA's greats, when they come into the league, were drafted into situations that, despite their own greatness, did give them a better chance to win and compete early on in their careers. Magic had Kareem, Kobe had Shaq, Bird had Parish and McHale, Tim Duncan had David Robinson. If not out the gate, somewhere early in their career, the team they were on made the requisite moves to truly surround their player with a team that can actually compete for a championship. LeBron James, on the other hand, did not have that luxury until he took matters into his own hands and joined Dwyane Wade and Bosh in Miami. But today, let's travel back in time and ask, what if? What if, just hypothetically, LeBron James was given that luxury that those other greats had? And what if there was an alternate universe where the Cavs just thought that Carmelo Anthony was better going into the draft, and the Detroit Pistons, the team that won the championship in LeBron's rookie year, took him with the second overall pick? Well, we're gonna find out today. Now, these type of videos take a long time to make, so if you want me to do more of these, drop a like on this video. If we get this video to 10,000 likes within the first 48 hours, I will do another one for my next video. Also, it would mean a lot if y'all checked out my podcast, Let's Keep It a Buck, where I get to talk about more NBA that just wouldn't make it on this channel, cause you know, I gotta play by the YouTube God rules sometimes in certain areas. My goal is to have it so I can take my time and work on bigger projects like this and post them on this channel, while I give my input on more trending weekly topics and other NBA news over on the podcast side of things. This week we had my guy Legend of Winning on, and here's a clip from that episode.
Hey, if you want me to spit a hook, it's $25, bro.
I'll send it to your cash app right now. I'll send it to your cash app right now. What's your cash app? What's your cash app?
Damn.
What's your cash app?
What's my cash app?
I'm sending it right now. Look. 25. What's your cash app?
Links will be in the description to check that out. But now let's get into it. So our story starts in the 2003-2004 season, where the one-seeded Detroit Pistons, by the miracles of the what if gods, aka me, drafted high school phenom LeBron James. Now, the season prior, they ran a starting lineup of Chauncey Billups at the 1, Michael Curry at the 2, Rip Hamilton at the 3, Cliff Robinson at the 4, and Ben Wallace at the 5. Now, adding LeBron to this lineup does a couple of things. Number one, considering that the Pistons started the season off in our timeline with a second-year Tayshaun Prince at the 4, it wouldn't be too out of the ordinary to assume that Larry Brown would throw out a lineup of Chauncey, Rip, LeBron, Tayshaun, and Ben Wallace, at least to start off the season. Another question is the question of if they still go after Rasheed Wallace at the trade deadline, because a big part of the reason why they did was because of a 6-game losing streak they had in February that caused the team to reevaluate their team and go after Rasheed. While one could legitimately argue that the Pistons would not have gone after him because they would have never gone on that 6-game losing streak if they had a player like LeBron, Joe Dumars was already going after Rasheed 2 years before the season, and a big part of their struggle in that stretch was because of their interior defense, more specifically from the 4 position, as players like Carlos Boozer, PJ Brown, Dirk Nowitzki, and Brad Miller all had terrific games against the Pistons in that losing streak. So my prediction, they still go after Rasheed Wallace and end the season with a lineup of Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, LeBron James, Rasheed, and Ben Wallace, with Tayshaun coming off the bench. And because of this terrific core that they have, the Pistons finish the season with 58 wins and come into the playoffs hot. As a side note, this is the only year I will show the standings because it just gets really hard to keep track of everything after the second year and make all the record changes and keep it as accurate as possible. As far as other storylines, LeBron does get less touches because he's on a championship level team out the gate and probably averages something closer to 16, 5, and 6. And because the rookie of the year was already close when LeBron was in Cleveland with better numbers, Carmelo Anthony does end up winning rookie of the year in Cleveland. And out west, the Nuggets lose 5 less games without Melo and miss the playoffs. Like in real life, the Pistons make it to the finals matched up against the Lakers, and just in LeBron's rookie year, we already get to see Kobe versus LeBron. Obviously, they're not LeBron and Kobe led teams specifically, but still, that's a privilege. And let's just assume that the Pistons still do what they do in real life and beat the Lakers in 5, and Chauncey Billups still wins Finals MVP. Now 2005 is really the first season where the Pistons started giving the keys to LeBron, as they see the talent he possesses, and they note that their offense needs a lot of work, being that in real life they were 17th the year before and then 18th in their championship year. Now again, given that there are other stars on this team and the fact that the Pistons were consistently one of the slowest paced teams in the league, I would say that LeBron would average around 22 points, 7 assists and 5 rebounds, immediately making a mark in the league as an elite two-way player and one of the best passers in the league. As now when he's dishing dimes, he's passing to Rip Hamilton, Chauncey Billups, Rasheed Wallace, and Tayshaun Prince, who are good shooters. And I would come to believe that with LeBron's improvement and Tayshaun Prince becoming one of the NBA's best 6 men, the Pistons would become a 60-win team and claim the 1 seed in LeBron's second year. Now at least this year it looked like the MVP race was more about the transformation that Shaq and Steve Nash brought to their teams, so I would still have Steve Nash winning the MVP, but I would not be surprised if LeBron was well within that mix for the award. Not much changes in the league except for the Nuggets becoming even worse, as they didn't really draft any game changers in the draft prior with the lottery pick that they had, and end the season with one of the worst records in the league. I also wonder if the malice at the palace would have ever happened, and if it didn't, how that would have changed things. But let's just say for this video, it still happens. LeBron just stays out of it and everything goes its course. And in the playoffs, we get to see LeBron versus D-Wade in the Eastern Conference Finals, and given the fact that the Pistons now have home court and are much better, they take out the Heat in 6 games. Now the 2005 Finals in real life was a series that went to 7 games. If you look at the series, the Spurs did a tremendous job of locking down the Pistons from 3. However, in our timeline, this is where LeBron dominates, as his shot creating and passing abilities become a very deadly weapon for the Pistons. The LeBron and Rasheed Wallace pick and roll become extremely deadly, as LeBron could either pass to Rasheed off the pop, go to the hole, or if he does, the defense collapses and he can pass out to Rip Hamilton or Chauncey or Tayshaun. And because of this, LeBron had himself a series. LeBron captures his 2nd ring in the league as the Pistons beat the Spurs in 6 games, and he is now 2 for 2 in his first 2 years in the league and captures his first ever Finals MVP. The 2005 draft is really where things start to get interesting around the league. Mind you, the Denver Nuggets in 2003 drafted Darko Milicic, and in 2004 I had them winning 5 less games with 38 wins, which landed them a late lottery pick in that draft. And assuming they drafted after the 9th spot, they probably pick between this group of duds. So they end up with the 3rd pick in the 2005 draft, where the Nuggets acquire Chris Paul. Now in real life, I know Deron Williams was picked over Chris Paul, but a lot of mock drafts actually had Chris Paul as the 2nd best prospect in that draft. However, after Bogut and Williams went 1 and 2, it just became a preference between D. Will, CP3, and Raymond Felton. So let's say the Nuggets actually smarten up and take Chris Paul. Let's also assume that the rest of the draft order stays the same, which means that Utah still gets Deron Williams, and New Orleans, instead of ending up with Chris Paul, ends up with Raymond Felton. That's tough. You hate to see it. However, moving on, in real life, the Pistons actually fired Larry Brown this season, as there was controversy in the 05 season that he was flirting with other teams that would give him max money. So the Pistons decided to fire him and hire Flip Saunders, who transformed the Pistons into the best team in the league, as in real life, combined with their already elite historic defense, Flip Saunders transformed them to having the 4th best offense in the league and ended up winning 64 games. Now let's assume the same happens in our timeline. Bron puts up monster numbers under Flip, and the Pistons win 68 games, the undisputed best team in the league. LeBron wins his first MVP, and to cut to the chase, as dominant as D-Wade was versus the Pistons in real life, there is no way they beat the Pistons with LeBron. The Pistons would move on to the finals and face off against the Dallas Mavericks. The Pistons end up beating the Mavericks, and LeBron wins his 3rd ring and 2nd finals MVP. And now the King starts off his career with a 3-peat, 2 finals MVPs, and a league MVP. And LeBron James being in the GOAT conversation is starting to get real. Now, nothing really happens in the 2006 NBA draft that changes anything major. The Hornets get a top pick in the draft, but they just get Tyrese Thomas. The Nuggets get a late lottery pick, again, no one good. The Jazz stay the course, the Cavs get worse with Melo, but not to the point where anything significant changes, at least with those teams. In real life, however, Ben Wallace decided to leave the Pistons as he was not on the best terms with Flip and wanted his money. Now luckily, they do have this guy called LeBron. And at this point, LeBron James is a bona fide superstar. And even without Ben Wallace, they still finished with the best record in the Week East, so let's just say they end up winning 56 games. Also in real life, the Denver Nuggets decided to trade for Allen Iverson to pair Carmelo Anthony with a star, but in our timeline, the Nuggets have Chris Paul, so they don't really need Allen Iverson. But Allen Iverson did still want to be traded, and in our timeline, instead of going to Denver, he still follows Carmelo, but this time in Cleveland, as it's not a Cavs who are pressured to surround Melo with a star after now 3 years of being mediocre in the East. The Detroit Pistons are still good enough to make it to the finals, but without Ben Wallace, Tony Parker and Tim Duncan dominate the Pistons in the paint, Bruce Bowen plays terrific defense on LeBron, and the Spurs win the 2007 championship in 6 games, with Duncan as the finals MVP and a subpar performance from LeBron. And just as the GOAT conversations were really heating up, LeBron gets his first finals loss, and on ESPN, we had Skip Bayless going off. The 2007 NBA draft comes with the Hornets getting the second pick in the draft, as they have now gone 2 seasons drafting Raymond Felton and Tyrese Thomas. But luckily, this draft had the one and only Slim Reaper, Kevin Durant. So that means Seattle ends up with Al Horford, and the Hawks go high with Joakim Noah as they desperately needed a center, and everything else stays the same except for the Bulls now having Brandon Wright instead of Joakim Noah. The Celtics still form their big three of Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett. Kobe and the Lakers still dominate the West and he still wins MVP. The Nuggets, led by Chris Paul and Marcus Camby and J.R. Smith this time, are a 2 seed in the West. KD wins Rookie of the Year on the Hornets, and the Cavs, led by Carmelo and Allen Iverson, finish the season with 54 wins. The Pistons, on the other hand, finished the year with a 2 seed with 59 wins, so still a very solid year for the Pistons. In the playoffs, we are blessed with a second round matchup of the Pistons versus the Cavs. However, the Pistons defense was just too much for the Cavs, as they had LeBron, Rip, and Tayshaun to throw at Melo, and had Billups guarding Allen Iverson. And they move on to the conference finals, where they match up with the Boston Celtics. Now, in real life, the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron took the Celtics to 7 games because of how great LeBron was in that series. The Detroit Pistons, without LeBron and without Ben Wallace, took those Celtics to 6 games as well. Now, I understand it's not perfect math, as the Cavs and the Hawks taking the Celtics to 7 does not mean that they were better than the Pistons and the Lakers teams who the Celtics beat in 6 games, but it's not really a stretch to say that the Pistons do beat the Celtics in the conference finals in 7 games if they had LeBron. And now we move on to the NBA Finals, where we have a matchup for the ages. LeBron James versus Kobe Bryant in the finals, with 2 relatively even teams. But without Ben Wallace down in the paint, the combo of Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom and MVP Kobe were just too much for the Pistons, as Kobe avenges the Lakers from their loss in 2004, claims his first ring without Shaq, and beats LeBron in the finals. After drafting Kevin Durant the year prior, the Hornets are back in the top 3 again, and with it, they pick OJ Mayo. However, like in real life, the Grizzlies offer the 5 pick and a couple of other players for OJ Mayo, and that number 5 pick ends up being Kevin Love. Oklahoma City still ends up drafting Russell Westbrook to pair him up with Al Horford. Now, with that, you might be asking, why did the Hornets not pick Russell Westbrook? Well, in real life, Russell Westbrook was actually projected to be in the late top 10, and him being selected at 4 was actually really high. Meanwhile, OJ Mayo was a consensus top 5 pick in that draft. Aside from that, everything else stays the same. Now, in this season in real life, the Pistons actually traded Chauncey Billups to the Nuggets for Allen Iverson. But in our world, Allen Iverson is actually content in Cleveland right now. The Nuggets have Chris Paul and never traded for Allen Iverson, and the Pistons aren't desperate for a shot creator like him, since, you know, they have LeBron James. However, they do end up firing Flip Saunders like in real life because of the back-to-back finals losses, and instead they hired Michael Curry. Needless to say, he wasn't a good coach, and on top of that, the Pistons supporting cast was starting to show its age. But I'm sorry, man. If LeBron could lead the 09 Cavs to 66 wins, LeBron shouldn't have any, I wouldn't say any trouble, but LeBron should be able to do the same for the Pistons, and LeBron James still has that monster season he had in real life, leading the Pistons to 65 wins and winning the league MVP honors. Now, in real life, Kevin Garnett suffered injuries that sidelined him for the second half of this season, but from everything I've read, that injury was just a freak injury. So let's just say in this timeline, it doesn't happen, and the Celtics dominate the 2009 NBA season and continue on their 66 win pace without the KG injury. They become the undoubted best team in the league as they come for revenge from the last season and win the NBA Finals in 6 games versus Kobe and the Lakers. The 2009 draft sees the Hornets' young core of KD and Kevin Love pick up James Harden with the 3rd overall pick in this draft, becoming the deadliest young core in the league. And let's just assume again that the NBA draft stays the same after that, as the Thunder are still a bottom feeding team with Westbrook and Al Horford, but instead of James Harden, they pick up Tyreke Evans to pair up with Westbrook and Horford. Sacramento gets Ricky Rubio, and since Minnesota still really wanted 2 point guards at the time for some reason, with their back-to-back picks, they draft Johnny Flynn and Steph Curry. The Warriors, however, in need of a point guard still, draft Brandon Jennings, and everything else stays the same. The 2010 season sees the Cavs having a down year from last year as Allen Iverson starts declining really fast and Carmelo's frustration with the organization is getting serious. The core of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kevin Love actually become a 50-win team in the West, which is really good. The core of Westbrook, Horford, and Tyreke Evans in OKC starts getting some real traction as well. The Boston Celtics win 4 more games with a healthier Kevin Garnett than they do in real life. The Orlando Magic win 60 games, and the Pistons somehow manage to still win 58 games because they have LeBron, and he comes away with the MVP once again. The season and the playoffs pretty much play the same way they do in real life, but my question is, with the healthy KG, do the Lakers beat the Celtics in 2010? Let me know in the comment section down below, because I don't want to make that call, because for the fans out there, y'all know my history. But let's just say Kobe does exactly what he does in our 2010 and pulls 2010 out for revenge from the season before in 7 games. Now, the 2010 offseason was already a momentous one in our timeline, as we saw LeBron James leave Cleveland and go to Miami. In this video's timeline, LeBron James is still frustrated. He started off his career with a three-peat, 2 finals MVPs, and a regular season MVP. And in the last 4 years, his finals record has gone from 3-0 to 3-2, and he was just bounced out of the 2nd round the year prior. So now, it's time for a serious talk. Now, mind you, this free agency class still features D Wade, who is frustrated as well without a championship in Miami. It also features Chris Bosh. It also features Amari Stoudemire, and it now features Carmelo Anthony, who never signed that extension that he did in real life with Denver. Now, this is how I feel like it plays out given those circumstances. Carmelo is frustrated in Cleveland. Miami doesn't seem so enticing with D Wade not having any, championship pedigree there. So why not team up in Cleveland and LeBron gets to go home? Now, from everything I've read, it seemed like LeBron and Wade were gonna team up one way or another. It was just a decision of where they would go. And also that third piece could have been Carmelo, it could have been D Wade, or in some cases it could have been Derrick Rose if they went to Chicago. But again, since they are teaming up with Carmelo in Cleveland, sorry Chris Bosh, you're not going to be playing with them. Bosh, on the other hand, goes to Chicago instead of Carlos Boozer. Amari Stoudemire still goes to New York, and Carlos Boozer goes to New Jersey to team up with D Will once again, as the only reason he didn't go to the Nets in real life this offseason was because the Bulls actually outbid them, but again, not anymore since now they have Chris Bosh. In the NBA draft, nothing drastic really happened, so let's go ahead and move on to the regular season. So because of the new lineup with the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron is actually forced to change his style to a small ball 4 much quicker than he had to in Miami, and the reason pretty much plays out as it does in real life, except the Cavs are the Heat. Now, in real life, the Cavs and the Clippers agreed on a trade that would send Mo Williams to the Clippers in exchange for Baron Davis and their 1st round draft pick, but did y'all remember how no one wanted to trade with the Heat because of how stacked they were? Well, that happens here with the Cavs as well. However, we do have a disgruntled Chris Paul in Denver, who hasn't really achieved anything significant in his time there. And like Carmelo Anthony, he wants out. So Denver trades Chris Paul to the Clippers in exchange for their 1st round draft pick. So in the playoffs, the Cavs and the Mavs meet in the finals, and while yes, LeBron does have championship experience this time, which is important, which means he probably won't choke as bad as he did in real life, the real problem is, who is guarding Dirk? Melo? LeBron? Personally, I think even 2013 LeBron would have trouble guarding Dirk. So while I understand that the Cavs could win this one, and I perfectly understand that argument, let's just say the Mavs pull it out in 7, and Dirk gets finals MVP and revenge for the 2006 finals versus LeBron. Now, Remember last season when Denver traded Chris Paul to LA for their first round draft pick? Well, that pick, like in real life, ends up being the #1 overall pick, and the Nuggets land Kyrie Irving. And after a year of losing, the Pistons end up with a top 5 pick in the draft where they select Tristan Thompson. So they haven't been doing too hot since they lost LeBron. The Heat, after their first season without D-Wade, also come out with one of the top picks in the draft, but again, they don't really draft any game changer. Now, let's take a quick break to look at the current league structure and who's dominating and who's not. In the East, we have the Cavs with Carmelo, LeBron, and D-Wade. The Bulls with D Rose, Chris Bosh, and the crew, minus Joakim Noah, as if you guys remember, he was drafted by Atlanta instead of Chicago. We have the Boston Celtics, who are still an elite team, the Indiana Pacers with a young Paul George, and the Orlando Magic with a Dwight Howard, who's becoming increasingly frustrated in Orlando. Out in the West, we have the San Antonio Spurs as usual, the New Orleans Hornets, who have Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kevin Love, the Thunder with Russell Westbrook, Al Horford, and Tyreek Evans, the Lakers with Kobe and them, and the Lob City Clippers with a little better chemistry, as they did get Chris Paul earlier than expected. Last year's champion, the Dallas Mavericks, on the other hand, like they do in real life, did trade away some of their important pieces that took them out of the championship picture. So the Cavs go on to dominate the lockout season with LeBron winning his 4th MVP trophy. They trample through the East once again and are matched up with the New Orleans Hornets in the finals with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kevin Love. Now, I'm not gonna lie, from a matchup perspective, I think this series ends up being much more competitive than the 2012 finals we got in real life, because Kevin Love on Carmelo is a real problem. But man, look, in this what if, LeBron has not won a championship since 2006, and the Hornets just didn't have enough experience yet. So LeBron wins his 4th championship in dominant fashion and nabs his 3rd finals MVP, and he brings the Cleveland Cavaliers that elusive first championship in franchise history. In real life, the #1 overall pick actually went to New Orleans, and in our timeline, they literally just had a finals berth, so obviously they won't have that pick. Same thing with Cleveland, who had the 4th overall pick. In real life, the Pistons were already bad in 2011, so I don't see the whole LeBron timeline affecting them too much. However, the Denver Nuggets, on the other hand, were horrible last year in their first year with Kyrie, and they luck into the #1 overall pick and draft Anthony Davis. Yeah, that duo is deadly. The Miami Heat end up having another top pick in the draft, as they had another horrible season without D-Wade, and with that pick, they select Bradley Beal. And I honestly want to make the call that maybe because the Warriors don't have Curry, that they have a higher pick in this draft and possibly draft Dame. But mind you, they did draft Brandon Jennings, a player who still had star potential in the season, so sadly, they still draft Harrison Barnes. Now, going into the season, hungry to be in that GOAT conversation, LeBron takes it up another notch, as like in real life, he has one of the most dominant seasons of his career, leading the Cleveland Cavaliers to a league best 65 wins and winning his 5th NBA MVP, being the first unanimous MVP in league history, as mind you, the only vote that stopped him that year was because one vote went to Carmelo, who in this timeline is his teammate. In the West, however, the New Orleans Hornets claimed the 1 seed as the trio of James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kevin Love start to peak, and they win 63 games. Side note, I am assuming that the Hornets just give Harden the max that he wanted and he re-signs there. The Thunder are still a playoff team, but aren't really anything dangerous, as they lack an elite two-way player. The Spurs and the Clippers play out as they do in real life. The Nuggets, however, become the surprise team of the West. Kyrie Irving is emerging as one of the bright young stars in the league. They also acquired Andre Iguodala through the Dwight Howard trade. Ty Lawson emerges as one of the best 6 men in the league, and Anthony Davis out the gate is a great defensive player. Moving on to the playoffs, the Cleveland Cavaliers trample through the East as usual. However, in the West, the Spurs actually do not make the finals. I think a lot of people underestimate exactly how much of a threat the Thunder were to the Spurs in those years. Mind you, in 2012, they beat the Spurs. 2013, the Thunder lose Westbrook in the first round. 2015, the Thunder don't have KD. And as soon as KD comes back in 2016 and Russ and KD are healthy, they beat a 67-win Spurs team in 6 games. The only time the Spurs actually beat the Thunder with everyone healthy before KD left for the Warriors was in 2014. But even that series went to 6 games, and Game 6 went to OT. So that was much more competitive than it looked. So given that fact, it's not really out of this world to think that the New Orleans Hornets can beat the San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference Finals with that core, and they go up against the Cleveland Cavaliers for a finals rematch. And because the two are more familiar with each other at this point, combined with development from the New Orleans Hornets, this series turns out to be much more competitive than the season prior. This series turns out to be an instant classic, and the series goes all the way to 7 games, where LeBron just says enough and drops a 40 bomb in Game 7, clinching his 5th NBA championship and 4th Finals MVP, putting him in a very elite class. Now, this is actually where I'm gonna draw the line. We have now gone over the first 10 years of LeBron's career, and I think we can all agree that it looks much different from the career he has right now. I haven't even edited the video yet, but I can tell you from the 10 years we've covered and looking at Audacity right now, this is probably gonna be a 25 to 30 minute video. But I think we've talked about enough of his career to kind of project the general trend of where the rest of the NBA goes from here. For one, I honestly think LeBron might just retire as a Cavalier given the circumstances. He's already at home, they've proven to be a competent franchise, and you know, maybe near the 2017-2018 season, he actually considers leaving because D Wade's age is really showing and Melo's defensive flaws become a really big problem, so maybe he leaves then. In other news, the Golden State Warriors dynasty never comes as Minnesota ends up drafting Stephen Curry instead. Who knows what Curry turns into Minnesota and how much of a game changer he becomes, but I still think they become a bad drafting team and probably waste a majority of Curry's career there until he leaves in free agency and maybe teams up with KD in New York. Maybe that's the next what if, who knows. The Harden Rockets never come to be because he re-signs with the New Orleans Hornets. The Nuggets become a league powerhouse with a core of Kyrie, Anthony Davis, and Andre Iguodala, and quite frankly, they'd probably end up winning 1 or 2 championships with that core considering the field. But let's just close this video talking about LeBron's resume. As I said in the beginning of this video, LeBron James did not have the luxury of having the help that players like Shaq, Kobe, Kareem, Tim Duncan, and Magic had out the gate. And the purpose of this video was to think about how LeBron's career would have panned out if he did. And what we see is a LeBron James that in just his first 10 years in the league has 5 regular season MVPs, 5 NBA championships, 4 finals MVPs, and 8 finals appearances with a record of 5-3. I feel like regardless of whatever we talk about after the 2013 season, when it comes to LeBron specifically, if LeBron had that head start from the beginning, yes, I feel like his career would have panned out to be much more accomplished. However, in terms of the GOAT conversation, I do think this resume is much stronger than the resume he has in real life, but I still don't think there's a point where he's considered the GOAT to a majority of the population the way Michael Jordan is revered by many right now. I really do think a big part of MJ fans hold that perfect 6-0 with 6 finals MVPs and no game 7s to an unreachable pedestal. While it is a flawed argument, I understand the logic and a lot of people go with it, and you can't really, like, come on man, like that's an insane resume. And as long as LeBron has multiple finals losses, as long as he doesn't stay with one team, as long as he loses to Kobe, and as long as he has a win where he doesn't have a finals MVP, Jordan fans can and will hold that over his head. In other storylines, however, when it comes to this what if scenario, we do get to see Kobe still end up with 5 rings. However, this time he wins 08 and 2010 instead of the back-to-back he had in real life. Tim Duncan loses out on the 05 championship and the 2013 finals appearance, and he might lose out on the 2014 ring as well, like I mentioned with the whole OKC Spurs thing. Chris Bosh never becomes a champion. However, in return, Carmelo and D Wade both become 2-time champions by 2013, and also with that, D Wade never wins the 2006 championship. Now, I know there's probably some flaw in this video somewhere, and if there is, please leave it in the comment section, man. Seriously, this is my first time doing a video like this, so I'll try to improve on it for next time. I know this video was flawed from a lot of fronts. The NBA draft and the draft lottery is always a circus show, and it's, again, literally a lottery, and I know the changes and standings that I've made in this video could have changed the draft order a lot. Certain teams may make moves different depending on the rosters that they have in this hypothetical timeline. You know, I understand all the issues with my methodology. But man, I've always wanted to do a what if like this, and I know quarantine content is hard right now, so I wanted to give you guys something entertaining to watch. Also, I'm probably not the only NBA YouTuber to get these messages, but a lot of people in my NBA YouTube career have asked me to do a what if, so here I am, here's my jab at it. Enjoy it as you will. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you liked it. If this video pops off, I'll definitely do more like it. And feel free to check out my podcast. Again, I'm trying to have multiple lanes here. And I really do want to have a platform where I can talk more basketball with y'all that just wouldn't be deep enough to be featured on this channel. You know, just more lighthearted conversations. Links in the description for that. It means a lot, man, really. But with that being said, thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far, you're a real one. And I'm out. Peace.